know that
Jesus, he will fix it.
I know that Jesus,
he will fix it.
We'll take it to Jesus.
Jesus, he will fix it.
After a while.
Like, I don't understand, to think about having children who like don't really know that part of me, that I'm just like, I don't even know how to do that.
Because the guy who taught me to never give up, to always have your sister's back, always have somebody, and even others who you don't know, always stand up for others and have others back. How could you not be there to have my back right now? And you just were like, bye, I'm out of here.
In football, and like, as long as you got time on the clock, there's still time. And so for me, like, his life, the good, bad, the ugly, the trauma and the rage, God gave us that time to bring it back full circle, to get the closure, and to just make it right. My father died on June 20th, 2018. I was 37 years old, and suddenly everything I knew about myself was uprooted. I had so many questions, and there were so many layers to peel back. Who was my daddy? And who am I as a result? What was his legacy? And what will mine be? My mantra for 2019 was happy, healthy, whole. I was determined to face my grief and heal. And my girls were there with me every single step of the way. I found strength in my vulnerability, and we had open, honest, transparent conversations. And that's what we're gonna do here in this space. So grab your journal, light some candles, pour a glass of wine, and get cozy. I'm Charity Bailey, and girl, we need to talk. As sisters, we've been through it all, but we experience every situation so different. I mean, when my dad died, Janelle, married with children. Elisabeth was married, and she had just turned 30 years old. And then, of course, there's me. I'm single, living out of state, and feeling disconnected from everybody else as the process was unfolding. We're going to talk about how my dad's life shaped us. We're also going to talk about how his death changed us. So without further ado, I'd like you to meet my sisters, Janelle and Elisabeth. Welcome, guys. How you doing?
Hello.
Hi.
All right, we're going to hop right in here. So I often talk about how I have certain memories with daddy surrounding football, or maybe sneaking away while you guys were little kids and going to breakfast with them. We often talk about going to the lake. Let's start with some of our fond memories and your daddy-daughter time. No, you first.
I'll start since I'm the second.
Yes.
So I will say the fondest memories I have with father, as we call him, is, for starters, number one, definitely waking up in the morning and sneaking off away from you guys to go get breakfast. And it can be anything like Denny's, McDonald's, just something. And then off top, the second one is he was the dad of the neighborhood that said, I'm not only going to take you to Funderland and to the fair and to McKinley Park to go swimming, but I'm going to take the rest of the kids. So to me, that's like my fondest memory, is getting out of the house with him and stacking in his Buick / Delta with like 10 other people literally and going.
You took mine. Well, one of my first thoughts was just like playing games with him. So we played card games all the time, like games most people hadn't heard of, country games like Tonk. But I also specifically remember learning how to play dominoes from him. And I was so little, like my hands were like half the size they are now. And I was trying to like stack the dominoes because I wanted to hold them like this, like the big people, but I used to stack them right here. And I got to a point where I was like, I know you're letting me win. Like, I know you could have beat me. But he would be like, no, that is 10. Libby, that is 10. Like if I scored. So just always teaching me to play those games. And Nelly, I was going to say the same thing. Just taking all the kids, like loading in the car and we used to go to McKinley Park to go swimming and get Dosty's barbecue and have a picnic. And like, so pig out first and then go swimming. And like you said, he was like the neighborhood dad. I mean, people, our friends that claimed him as uncle and all those things. I remember one specific time we were all loaded in the Buick, probably Nelly's birthday because it was summer. But like, I think it was Corey, like somebody who wasn't gonna make it, thought they couldn't come, then they suddenly turned the corner, was like, wait for me.
Running down
Yes,
the
it was
street.
Corey.
Random cousins.
So it was
Hey,
just
let me
like
in.
add another person to the car. Everybody scoot over, get on somebody's lap, let's go. But he
Laugh
was
it up.
down for all that stuff.
And in the 80s, you could do that. Let's
Right.
be
Yeah.
very clear.
or
Now,
early
Right.
90s.
Right. Libby, you mentioned him letting you win. I never got to win. He'd be like, hey, you had 10 right here. Now I'm going to slap it on you with 15. So I think it's very interesting that like your parents kind of give you what you need, right? I think for me, it was like, hey, if you don't catch it, somebody else going to catch it and you need to go get it. Whereas with you,
Yeah.
it might have been like, let me help you along so that you understand what's happening. In terms of memories, we all went to Daddy's job sites, and I think that his work ethic affected all of us different, right? But I know that like Libby, your major initially was architecture, and like you guys would discuss different things in terms of like how buildings were made and foundations and that type of thing. And I'm like, oh, that house is pretty cool. So how do you think that your relationship with him has like impacted like the little things that you do throughout the day and like how you move about your day?
Oh my gosh. So when you said that, one of my first thoughts is he always called me a mathematician. So like you said, I was so much younger than you. So if you were a teenager, I might have still been 6 or 7. So some of the things where he was just boosting my confidence, every little thing I did when I was doing my homework, or if he was doing his bills for work or going over his receipts, he would ask me the math problems and like quiz me and things like that. So he would always call me a mathematician. And I think now as a math teacher, it took me a while to realize like that goes that far back, where I had high confidence as a student, high confidence as a person who's like smart at math. I don't think I ever had that experience of buying into the fact that like girls don't do, right? Like as you get older, boys are good at math, boys can do all these things. I was like, I'm a mathematician. Like,
Don't tell me nothing else.
Right, that's that on that.
By middle school, I was a mathlete, like nerd, but and then things like, I know we all went to his job sites and kind of just by observation we know certain things, but in high school, especially when I took like physics and things like that, he helped me with my projects. So we would go to Home Depot and like I had to make a catapult. Another time I had to make a boat that had to float, but so for the catapult, we went to Home Depot, like tested out different supplies. We set up some of it, like we had to get a spring and we just took an aisle in Home Depot and we're testing the spring and things like that. But he got so excited. He has all the tools that I needed to do this stuff, but he went and got me my own special drill that fit my hands so that I could have the tools to do all the things by myself, help me measure it out, all that stuff. So those are memories I definitely have of just like learning to do things precisely, do it right the first time, like, and tell the people in Home Depot that they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Or lumberjack.
Yes. And I've said that a lot of my life lessons came through his country soliloquies and that type of thing. And Nellie, I remember you mentioning one time in terms of confidence, of him always telling you that you were smart and teaching you how to balance a checkbook and that type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of life stuff definitely came from Daddy. Balancing a checkbook, teaching me how to count money, making sure you're not cheated, how much you should get back, even if something was like $1. Like, hey, you gave him $2, or something's $1.25. How much money do you give him? How much should you get back? Those life lessons for sure. I think for him, the biggest thing I think about is working hard. That's like what he more so instilled in me. So if you're balancing that checkbook, like making sure that it really is balanced, and then the why behind it. Why are you balancing this checkbook? And can you do this for somebody else? And what's the purpose of why you're doing something? I think that's what I got.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, Mama mentions often that she feels like a lot of our confidence, especially as women, girls and now women, came from Daddy and him, feeding into us and talking to us and giving it to us straight. And so I think when we start to peel back who Daddy is, who he was, who we are because of him, there's so much to it, right? Because on one hand, you have the dad who was nurturing and loved us and was the community dad and took us, to the park, and we have all of these fond memories. But there's another side, right? There's the side of him where he abused mama, and a lot of people don't know that we were estranged from him for so long. And so working through therapy and working through grief and all of that, you kind of start to try to find the balance in like, what was your trauma and rage and pain that caused you to be this way, but also made you want to be this way? And it just kind of reveals, the crazy part about being just a human. And Nelly, again, as a parent, I think you understand that, like, I'm still a human and I'm trying to figure it out. So let's talk about that. Because, when Daddy died, he hadn't met the girls yet. And how did you process all of that?
Oh, Lord. So you just said a lot there and then led into that. So it's weird because of what he did instill in me, I think a major part of me processed it the way he would have taught me to at first. I think because he was there like at my baby shower, and then after the baby shower, all of a sudden, because of some things that happened, he was just like MIA. At first I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. He'll be here by the time I have my daughter, which was 2 months later. Then he wasn't. And then it was 6 months later and she was born. And then it was 8 months. And then it was a year. So I still would send him letters and stuff. Because again, what he instilled in me is determination, right? So I was like, I'm still going to drive by his house. I used to drive by his house and put things in his mailbox, pictures of the girls, family photos. But I think processing it first was, this really isn't happening yet. This isn't happening, because the guy who taught me to never give up, to always have your sister's back, always have somebody, and even others who you don't know, always stand up for others and have others back. How could you not be there to have my back right now? And you just were like, bye, I'm out of here. So I worked through a lot of stuff. It was anger. It was resentment. It was a little bit of denial. But then at the end of the day, it was disappointment and hurt, right? Because I'm like, so much about my daughter reminded me of him, like her little face and like her weird hairline that's like mine. I'm like, this came from Daddy's side of the family. So I just learned how to say, by the time she was 2, I was like, he's never going to meet her. I just had to accept, like, this is what he's decided to do. For sure, I think by the time she was almost 3 and I was pregnant again, I just accepted, like, he's decided to just be done. So
Well, one of my therapists back in 2013, she told me that I needed to start grieving my dad as though he was dead. And that was a very hard thing for me. Like, I had to write a letter to a person that's alive as if he's gone already. But Nelly, what you just described, those are the stages of grief.
Yeah, I had already. I think I used to say it so harshly, or I would say stuff and people were like, "Dang, really?" But I was like, I think I've accepted that he's gone, because I had to help myself say, if I don't see him again, and then the next call I get is, "Hey, your dad passed," I need to be able to be okay with that. So I already said to myself, he's already passed away. That's literally where I was at already.
Maybe I'm the only one who never quite processed it that way. As I processed it constantly, it feels like, because again, the first time in our lives where he completely disappeared, had a blow up at us instead of somebody else, and just went MIA, stemmed from things that culminated at my high school graduation, which was public. It like ruined the moment. A few other things I know that like got lost in the shuffle that moment that I couldn't ever find again. Like all those things kind of, I recognize, like, this is the point at which the stuff we've seen him do to other people, push people away, all that stuff, like, it's us now, and this is weird. And that was literally like I had just turned 18. So it's like, now that we're all adults, like we're fair game, and this doesn't make any sense. So I wrote him a letter sometime in that next year. I think his next birthday, after that whole first year had gone by, and I got a card, and then I was like in the aisle going, how the heck do I pick out a card? All the dad cards feel inauthentic at this point in time. So I just got like a thinking of you with blank inside. And by the time I wrote everything, I was like, I can't even fit it in here. I just wrote a whole letter. And one of the things I said, I caught him up on my life at the time, at that point it was post-college, different roommates, moved, whatever other part-time job. And I also told him, like, I've started dating this person and I feel like I'm going to end up marrying this person and you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
And that happened.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, because Daddy knew Philip, but he knew him as your friend and as a roommate and as, a college buddy. And here you are transitioning into this new space in your life, your first boyfriend, your first kiss, your first everything. And now you're set to marry him and Daddy's not there to walk you down the aisle.
Well, like you said, the strange thing is, like, I don't necessarily see Daddy as knowing Philip. Like, if I mentioned him, he wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that friend. Like, he knew Ivy and Dana, like they had come home with me, they had come to Thanksgiving, they had gone to games with us.
You only met him.
So right, so he met Philip amongst everybody else, like at Easter and at church and in a crowd of new, Black kids at Cal from events. But I don't even think he necessarily knew, like, we subletted together that summer, all those things. Even though he was there, it wasn't like, this is a special person in my life. It was just, could have been one of the other 10, 15, 20 guys I knew in college. So that has also been difficult with going through all of this and having Philip by my side, because he doesn't have a relationship with this person. He can only hear through us and see how we straddle that fence of the complexity of the jokes and the fuzzy feelings and the admiration, and then the pain and the waiting and the looking over my shoulder thinking, if somebody calls me and they take too long at the beginning of the call, and I'm going to go, what's wrong? Because I'm waiting.
Yep.
It's been 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And I'm always like, I'm going to get this call. It's going to be somebody random from our old neighborhood or something. And I'm just going to find out he's gone. So I lived in that space for 5.5 years. And Philip had to kind of just figure out how to be there with me in it.
Well, we did get the call, right? But it came from our cousin Eric, who got it from someone else, who said, hey, your dad's in a home. And that's how we found out that Daddy had a second stroke. And then we went to work online, found him, and it was a whole thing. But I feel like it was kind of the thing that we had been expecting, only he wasn't dead. And so for me, I've always said that we got a second chance. And anyway, to find closure, if there's anything in it, right? So, Janelle, I know when we figured it out, you took the girls to meet him for the first time. How did you feel? How did that feel?
So when I went to see him for the first time, that's what I will say first. On the way there, I was like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if he's going to recognize me. I don't know if he's going to be in his right mind. I don't know how I should feel, but this is my dad. This is to me, in that moment, he was there for 28 years of my life. So just to miss the 6, even though I had kids, you still are my dad from 28 years. You're why I exist and all this. So when I got there, I started singing, because that's what I do. That's what I do to help myself in times of nervousness. And he wanted me to. So when I first walked into that house and they were like, he's right here, they were moving him from, I don't even know what it is, some type of equipment to get him on the bed. Yep, because he couldn't walk. So they were getting him on the bed. And I was like, oh my God, I've never seen him helpless, ever. A 6'4" man at 300 and something pounds. He's the biggest guy in my life. And the most riotous person ever in my life.
Beast mode.
Right.
Yes.
So
to see him like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I said is, Father. And then he was like, yeah, hey, Nelly. And right then I said, Father, you want me to sing you a song? It went just like that. Because in his hey, Nelly, it was like, this is the weakest sound I've heard from him. But the fact that he knows who I am, he knows I'm about to sing to you and cuddle you and pamper you, because this is what his 3 daughters have always done. Right. So I just started singing to him. And then from there, it actually felt better. And that's when I got you on the phone.
Yeah. And so what was it like for you when you first introduced him to the girls?
When I first introduced him to the girls, it was a process for me, because that's when I said, I don't know if he should meet my kids. I went through, do you deserve to meet my kids? how does my husband feel about you meeting our kids?
Mhm.
What explanation do I need to give to them? And they're almost 3 and 5. So they had a lot of questions,
Mhm.
but it felt good. Once we got inside the home, we talked about it, and we already had a name for him, Grandpa. So they knew that Grandpa is from Mississippi. He has an accent and all this. And when we got there, I recorded the whole thing, and they were like, "Ah," and then he was crying. I don't think I had tears in me. I think after everything, I didn't have tears. I couldn't even get tears out, but to see him crying, and you guys know Daddy is not emotional in the sense of crying.
Yeah.
It meant a lot to me to see him crying and to see them hold his hand and say, "Wow, his hands are so big." And I was like, "That's where Mommy got my big hands from."
Yeah. And you mentioned Daddy crying. I think I've only seen Daddy. The very first time I saw Daddy cry, it was right after our parents separated. And it was the first weekend that we had gone back to see him. And he had put us all in the car. And me and my little nosy self was like, this is taking too long. So I was like 9 and y'all were like 3 and 6. And I'm like, this is taking too long. So I run in the house and he's in there, this big, massive man, just like bawling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Daddy, what's wrong? And he was like, I can't take you guys back. Like, this is home. And I was like, it's okay, Daddy. And he sat down in the chair. And again, this huge, humongous man, and I'm 9. And I'm like, Daddy, it's okay because our hearts are always with you and we'll be back. We're never going to leave you. And so for me, as I process, this big, strong man becoming this suckling baby and all of the in between, I can only remember the love that he had for us, that he gave to us, and knowing that, like, his pressure point was always us. Like, you could do a whole lot of things because the second time I saw him cry was when Uncle Curtis died.
Yeah, that's the only time I've seen him cry.
Yes.
Uncle Curtis is
And so
it was like his dad who raised him, basically.
Yes. So the very first time I saw him express emotion in the sense of tears was about me and you and Elisabeth, and then about Uncle Curtis. And then again, on the phone. So we talk about where we were when we got the call. So we got the initial call from our cousin Eric, and then Janelle immediately, we got the initial call from our cousin Eric, and then he randomly called me a few days later, and it was his voice. It was just like this. And Daddy is big and strong and baritone. And he said, come see about me, come get me. And I hopped on the phone and I called Janelle. And she hopped in the car and went to the home and got on the phone with me. And he was crying then. And he said he was sorry. Yeah. And so, I talk often about the different ways that he gave us life lessons. And one of them was in football. And like, as long as you got time on the clock, there's still time. And so for me, like his life, the good, bad, the ugly, the trauma and the rage, God gave us that time to bring it back full circle.
Yeah.
To get the I'm sorry, to get the closure, and to just make it right. And so one of you mentioned also that, like, this man, I think it was you, Janelle, who raised us on these family values of like, you always show up for your sisters, you always show up for your family, you protect your home, has now left. Yes. Ow, straight, right? And so the only thing we knew to do, even though he wasn't there for those years, was to like hop in the car and like show up.
Yep, I will never. So that was the Good Friday, and I was at work. And when you called me, I was like, okay, I'm leaving now. And I told my job, like,
bye.
I'm about to go find my dad.
Mama saying that we don't fight in here, we love each other. And Daddy saying, this is home, and you protect home. Nellie, how are you instilling some of the values that you may have gotten from Daddy into your children?
Oh my gosh, of course. This is your sister. And as you say, Di, this is your built-in best friend. You don't need no other friends. This is your best friend. So just so that they know that the world is ugly. So when you're out there, you're going to have people who act like they love you, men or women, who act like they got your back and all that. But regardless of anything that happens, the second thing that they know is Mommy, Daddy always got your back. Me and Nate say that to them all the time. Now, number one, Jana is your sister. I don't care how bad you guys go at it and fight, you guys love each other, and there's apologies at the end of that, and hugging. We're huggers. 1, have your sister's back. That's your built-in best friend. 2, mommy, daddy always got your back. I don't care if you right or wrong. That's what my dad taught me. If I'm in the wrong, it doesn't matter. He's still about to go blow everything up. But just being able to have that honest relationship with them, so they know I can come to my mommy or my daddy if something is scary, bad, ugly. If I'm in handcuffs, I'm about to tell my mom the truth, my dad the truth. So
and they gonna ride for me.
Yeah, that's for sure what I got from him. And then third is hard work, determination.
Now, Elisabeth, let's talk about marriage and again, walking down the aisle and how do you think losing daddy so early on in your marriage has affected you?
That is like this nebulous, unnamed topic, I think, for me. It feels, first of all, just going back to like dating someone, it feels confusing, and like choosing to date someone, having a background where, okay, my dad is this guy who seems so sweet, and then he has like flip mode blackouts, and then all these things where I'm like, I go into stuff looking for red flags because I know that like that's the real, right? And then there's kind of this archetype of like women look for someone like their dad. I'm like, I don't think that's true for me. Not in like body type necessarily. Although I am drawn to like big cuddly people in general, and personality and those things, I think it was more of, like Nelly said, the determination, the creativity, that, like you will work, you will find a way to do something. Those are things that Philip did have that was like, this is what a man should be for me. But in most other ways, I think they're very different. And so then sometimes I ask myself that, like, was I thinking of it this way, or was I just focused on, like, I don't think I was thinking about daddy as I chose a mate, but as I was thinking like all the things that will come down the line in life, I watch Nelly's kids, they have a grandfather on Nate's side, and they have two grandmas, and we had one grandparent, period. So I'm like, there's this pain of being, watching them not know this person who's so magnanimous for us, but they also have three grandparents, like so much love and so much wisdom and so much to draw from. Then I looked at, my in-laws, and I'm like, dang, it's going to be the same. They'll have a grandma and grandpa from Phil, and then they'll just have my mom. And like I don't understand, to think about having children who like don't really know that part of me, that I'm just like, I don't even know how to do that. So
and the age that we lost, the age that he stepped away from us, we were already adults. We were already who we were going to be. So it wasn't like, you're 6 and you're a fatherless child. Like, that's not what it was. And so I think, I know, Libby, when you said that, that does make me, I just started remembering about other family or whatever, friends, where they don't get it. Like, oh, how are you really grieving this person that you lost when he wasn't there for the past whatever years? It's weird. It's
hard to explain.
It is, because you're still an adult, and I am him and he is still me. Like you just said, most of me is daddy. Some of it is mama, but I feel like most of me comes from my dad.
Yeah. And so it's hard to explain that to other people too. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because again, it's pulling the pieces apart and honoring all of the pieces. And my therapist told me in 2013, she said, Charity, your dad has some mental health happening that is not, it's unchecked. So the man that you grew up knowing is not there anymore. And I was like, and so I think we're so busy trying to reconcile the two when we just have to honor all of the pieces.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing for the mind to embrace. And it's difficult for other people. Even when I talk to my friends and I say like all of these things, because everybody knows I'm such a daddy's girl and I love my daddy and da 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 da. And then with the same fervor, I say, but I would have ran him up out that house, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I also am so much of him, right? Like, me and mama are very different. And so they're like, wait, what? I would not marry him based on XYZ, all of these things. And so it's honoring the man, it's honoring the father, it's honoring the child, it's honoring
the brother, right?
The brother,
because he was a brother, he was an uncle. And then I'm glad you said that, Di, because as a parent or sister, we have we get into it, right?
We just
we just got into it, but we move on. And I think that's the part we got from mama.
Exactly.
Like, we're not holding no grudge. Get it out, fight, cuss at each other, whatever you got to do. And the next day we having some wine or laughing at whoever, right? So, but as a parent, I do think that, because I know sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like, Janelle, you're being mean right now. You're kind of being too mean. Like, ease up. They're 8 and 5. You're not 20. You're not 15. But you just want to teach them the basics. I'm gonna say this and I'll let you continue. I think one of the things that I got from him when he passed away, in a box that's still in my garage, is I got some letters and things that I had mailed him and wrote to him and stuff. And I got him back. But in addition to that, I also have his Bible and some handwritten notes in which it helped me so much. This just happened to me because I just read it, November 2019, where he talked about, it was him writing prayers. He was writing prayers and his notes and bulletin notes of how he could be a better dad to us. Now, it wasn't a better dad to us at this age. It was when our parents were still split and we were going back and forth to their house. That's how old they are. Yeah. So that just encouraged me to say he was still trying to get it right at that time. He knew what he had did as a man. He had his own faults as a husband, had his own faults as a brother. He knew he wasn't a perfect dad, clearly, and he knew he had 3 daughters who lived in separate houses. But how can I spiritually take these notes from the churches that he was at and see, like, what can I do better as a dad? And what can I pray about as a dad to be better for my daughters? That to me is soothing and touching.
Yeah. Well, it brings more humanity to it, right?
Yeah.
As I encounter different situations, I'm now starting to go, oh my goodness. Think about this man who grew up in the Jim Crow South. Let's start there. I'm overwhelmed in 2020 with the fact that we still being killed and we're still experiencing all of this inequality. Think about a man who was raised in the Jim Crow South, whose dad was raised in a time where he was viewed as less than human, who also didn't have the greatest relationship with him, and his siblings and his mom. And now he's trying to piece it together. Like, figuring out the humanity of our parents.
Yeah.
Is
they're people.
Deep.
They're a person.
They're people.
Before they had kids. And like, Libby, what you said, how would you explain to your kids or whatever? I feel like my kids know daddy. Because I was talking about him all day. They will tell you everything, just like I would tell you. He rolled his pants up,
And the thing is, they will, if I have kids, they will, in a different sense than your kids were, they were just old enough to possibly remember meeting him and those things, like, now when they hear someone talk or whatever, and they'll say, he sounds like grandpa, because they got that chance to absorb a little bit of his presence.
As we unpack, what are you learning about yourself? Like I said earlier, as I start to think about daddy and growing up in the Jim Crow South and all the things that he was carrying, the first time we saw him harassed by police, all of these things are embedded in me. So when I think about him, his need to protect, if you told daddy anything happened to you, he was going to go set the record straight immediately. I realized that I have that in me. And I recently told someone, I am no longer going to stand up for somebody who won't stand up for themselves, because I realized that he just didn't have the tools to process. They didn't do therapy back in the day. He was a big, strong Black man, so he needed to be big and strong and take care of his siblings and his mama and show toughness and be this and that. People didn't realize daddy is so sensitive. Let me tell you something. The strongest, baddest people are sensitive. I'm sensitive as hell. And that's why I will run up on you for the people that I love.
All the stuff that he had to deal with back then. And it still was with him coming here from Mississippi to California as a teenager and being like, oh my God, I walked into a restaurant and people are eating together of the same race, like people who are Black, white, Mexican. That's not how it was in Mississippi.
That's
Yeah.
all.
They
That's
called you boy, demeaned you, the whole
exactly.
thing. And so now you in the world trying to figure out how to stand tall in your stature and in your and not be insecure. It's so much. So
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Grieving him has been a lot. So what has your grieving process been? We'll start with you, Elisabeth, and then we'll go to you, Janelle.
Interestingly enough, I think I was able to grieve deeply up front. I know sometimes, when you have to just take action, you have to like swallow it for a while, get stuff done and come back. But one of the most like deep reflective stretches of time for me was when I was writing his obituary. We had a month between his death and his memorial, and after we got the dates and the policies and all that stuff, then it was just like, okay, where's that video clip Nellie took when we were talking that time, and where are those notes we jotted down that time, and let me ask Mama again, and let me ask Aunt Donna again, let me double check these dates, and looking at his yearbook. But there's so much that we knew already, and tidbits and pieces, and the underside of the story and the nice version of the story, but to sit down and write them out and make a story, I was just like, this is going to be 3 pages, and I can't help it. Everybody's going to have to read it, because it felt like I was honoring all those parts of him, from the fact that, he was born to a former sharecropper who knew his closest white relatives, who, was related to the slave master, to the fact that, they lost a sibling and left the Jim Crow South, like all in a few months, to the fact that, he was a Southern kid who came to California and was treated less than. And then he got to vote. The first time Black people were able to vote, he got to vote because he turned 18 in like 1965. The math is there somewhere. But it was just like, it gave me a chance to process all that he went through as a person first, before I got here, before you got here, to go, like, everything that I know about him, it does help humanize, but to just put it all together and get to that last part where, we gave each section titles, and that last one was Time on the Clock. Like, his life wasn't in vain. His struggles weren't in vain. They were deep and hard and terrible. But like, if I'm writing my life story, what's the next chapter? And what do I do with all this? And who do I touch along the way? Because like, every little piece matters, and I'm gonna have to share this forward. His story, my story, and I don't know. So that was a big part of my grieving process. And then, I don't know, I just had little silent moments of reflection. I had a lot of dreams about him, sometimes where he was still mysteriously alive, but in the dream I somehow knew, like, we scammed death or something. We were trying to hide him, like all these kinds of weird things. And it took, I feel like it took, I can't even put a timestamp. I was going to say a year, but there was a point where I went like, I don't think I cry anymore. But sometimes, 5 months later, I was in my room sobbing and feels like, what's wrong? I'm just like, I just need time. Like, I don't know, I saw a combat boot or I smelled concrete and I just started crying. Like, he's not here anymore, So all those little things that make you smile, then they make you cry.
Yeah. And it's football season. So that, like, I can actually watch football again. The first season, I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was just too hard. And now the game ends and I'm like, but I have a voicemail of him talking about football. So Janelle, let's talk about your grieving process and the tools that have helped you along the way.
Man, so I think up until recently, I think I realized that I'm still grieving.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, sister.
And especially because I do have 2 daughters and I see how they are, with my husband. with Nate or whatever, and which is great. I love it. But it's people who recently lost someone when they say, "Oh my goodness." Like, so I know someone who recently lost someone within a month ago, and it's kind of like they make an excuse for why they're, oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm crying right now. And it's like, you're fine. My dad passed in 2018 and I'm driving down the street and see all these cement trucks and I still get a tear. It's not a tear of sadness. It's just like a, hey, Father, I know you're there, you know, or I feel his spirit. I feel his presence. I know people think that's weird, but I'll be washing dishes and I feel his presence. I can feel him. Like, I just feel his spirit. I think the process was just, I don't know, me crying. And it's hard for me because I am a person that goes to cemeteries and stuff, even though I know, like, as a Christian, to me, I personally believe, like, duh, he's not there. But because to me, I feel like his ashes are there for some odd reason. I like to go sit there, and I go sit there by myself and decorate by myself and take pictures and sing songs and do all that by myself. But to be very direct with your question, I think the grieving process for me is still going on, starting with, obviously you're just crying and you're trying to wrap your head around it, because when someone is gone, specifically a parent, you feel different. I've lost a grandparent who we're very close with. People don't, you will never understand. Sorry. If you have not lost a parent, you will never, ever understand. So just be there for the person. If they need to just sit there with you and cry, if they need to sit there and drink themselves to death, whatever they do, just be there for the person. But you will never understand. And that, what I learned from Daddy passing, weirdly, is that I wanted another child. And I say that because the way I had both of you. It wasn't just like Di's in this state, and if people don't know, Di's in a whole nother state than me and Libby. Libby is like an hour and a half from me. But at either time, we got to be together. You got to be with Libby. I got to be with Libby. I got to be with you. And at some point, we all came together. But having both people being there for
The
you.
triangle.
And going through it with you. Because I can't explain to my husband or to a friend how I feel. I can't explain that to you. But my sister or my sibling knows how I feel. Even if I'm mad, if I'm sad, if I'm hurt, if I'm crying, if I'm confused. I felt my grieving process was all of that. Crying, mad, sad, happy, everything. But I was thankful because I do feel like it's weird. I was like, Jesus, this is a story. Because the way it ended was like perfect to me. I couldn't have asked God for another way for it to end, because he got to meet my kids. I got to have my husband there with me. And when I got there to the house, Nate was right there with me. And I sang to what you would say is his body. And for some people, that's weird. Like I said, I expressed myself through singing. And I got to sing to him when I first saw him again. And that day when the body was there, I got to sing to that body and like left and was like, whatever we got to do, we got this afterwards. And then the service helped me a lot because I got to sing, which Daddy loved his daughter singing. Hey, my kids was raised in the church. I always say that.
Stop telling people, Joe Jackson, stop making us think you're going to come in. We talked a lot about home itself and family and how that's, something that we got from him. But one of the very important things to me was that when we found out he was in the home, we got to the home, one of the employees said, your dad would lay here and cry in the middle of the night and say, call my daughters, they're going to show up for me. And so for me, you ain't talked to us in 6 years, but you fall ill and you know that if you call us, we going to show up. And when we show up, we going to ride hella hard. And we did. He was I've never seen this many people, because you guys came, then I flew in, then Libby flew in, and our friends, like we have friends that would jog to the home, our god sisters, my godparents, his siblings. Suddenly there's all this support. And to your point, Janelle, about the perfect ending to a story, he even got to apologize to some of them that he showed out on. And so for me, the biggest takeaway, if I had to give Daddy's life a title, it would be that of God's grace and mercy. Because God gave him that. God gave us that second chance so that we could like find closure and start to heal. When we talk about grief, and I told you guys before, Amber gave me this quote that grief is just love with nowhere to go. And so we've kind of made a point of honoring Daddy by spending time together and being intentional about our time together.
Yeah.
We couldn't this year because of COVID, but like the first year we got together in Oakland and we just, as Libby put it, threw a bunch of love at the grief.
Yeah.
And so, Janelle, to your point about us being sisters and coming together and being there for each other to ride through this storm together, we've done it so many times in so many different capacities. And I am just so honored that God chose the two of you to allow me to take this life journey with. Because it wouldn't look the same without you. And so Daddy gave me all the life lessons and Mama gave me all the faith, but they both gave me you. And I appreciate you. So
You're going to make us not talk, right?
that ugly cry out of the way. Let's wrap up with our favorite thing about Daddy.
So my favorite thing about Lamar.
I can talk while you think.
Go ahead.
I don't. There's a lot of them. Obviously, a lot. You guys would probably say some of the ones. So I won't say the obvious ones, which are football games, right? Like football games. Okay. My favorite memory of Daddy is how much he would just let us do whatever we wanted to do. Like things that seemed crazy to people. Like, I'm going to say three things. Okay. One, and it all has to do with this, is we would get in his tractor. So people who are not country girls or whatever, the tractor has the little thing you raise up. My dad had a bucket. My dad had a tractor and he had a big rig and he had a huge green truck because he was a contractor. I don't know if we said that. He was a cement mason. Yes. So in the summertime, he would put me and my friend Patty, and I think you too, Libby, we would sit in it. Yes, the part that scoops up the dirt. We would sit in it and dangle our legs, and he would then lean it back and he would raise the whole thing up and just bring us up and down and up and down and up and down like a swing. And that shows the simplicity of the type of life he even needed. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one. And the other ones are things that are very similar to that, which is just a hayride. We would be here today. Hey, yeah, Saturday. Hey, y'all want to go on a hayride? We'd go get in his truck with his tools in it, in the back of his truck with dirty crap in there. He'd throw a blanket down, he'd sit down. And at that time, everything wasn't built up in Natomas like that. We would go way out there towards Rio Linda and hang on his bars on his truck and swing back and forth. And the third thing has to do with the same thing. We would sit on his lap and he would take us driving. So it's all things that Daddy will let us do. I don't know if everyone does this, but that showed how simple his life needed to be. Learning how to drive, sitting on his lap, you know, that's it. The simple, fun Daddy. That's
it. Again, it will go forever. I was trying not to drink on the side of where my tooth hurts, and I thought about his dentures.
Oh my gosh.
The gold tooth.
Oh my gosh.
And his little things that you're just like, sir. People wonder why I know random facts. And I'm like, because my dad.
Hey, now I done told you. Hey, you think you know everything. That's the problem with young people today. You just think you know every goddamn thing.
You think you're so goddamn smart.
Hey, I done forgot more than you ever know.
I'm trying to learn you something.
Oh, crap.
All right, there's your outtake right there, Erin.
Hey, Theo, now answer me this. Here you go, answer me this.
Answer me this still doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. Love you.
No, it doesn't, but it's fine because these are all, this is what they're looking for. It's fine, yeah.
And also washing his hair with Dove soap in the bathtub like this. Sir, have you ever heard of shampoo?
There's so much that we can talk about, so many memories that we have of Daddy. And on that note, let's just toast his life.
Ooh, no.
Oh, Nelly got her fancy glass. Oh, bottle. Okay.
This is the one. This is the one you bought me.
Yes.
I say
We gonna do it. Do it.
We're in a row. BG 1, 2, 3.
Ready? To Daddy.
To Father.
To Daddy.
We love you,
Cheers.
Father.
And even this is a tribute to Daddy. Yeah.
I got a Snickers in my purse.
Baby pork.
That's a tribute to Daddy.
Random sneakers eating and snacking in the middle of the night. Yes. Gotcha. So many years. I've been living in sin. So many days. I've been astray.
Jesus in heaven.
Jesus in heaven
Knows the way.
knows the... On the next Girl We Need to Talk.
I remember when the day that we were going to get married, my mother came to the house to bring me something, and I hugged her and I said, "This is it. I'm going to be married forever." And that was my mindset. So, that was my mindset. I'm going to be married forever. And so that was my goal, but it just didn't work out. When I saw how the violence was affecting my daughters and me, I couldn't.
Yeah.
The Lord said, "You're not just responsible, you are responsible for your children. You're not just responsible for their food, clothing, and shelter, but you're responsible for their emotional and psychological well-being also, and you know better."
Thank you for watching Girl We Need to Talk. You can find me across all social media platforms at Miss Charity Bailey. Make sure you like and subscribe.